Okay, here we go. Twitter Tuesday. Trying something a little different each day right now. And on Tuesdays, I'm going to be reaching out to the internets to see what kind of questions are floating out there that I should maybe cover, I guess, on Tuesday. And I really liked how today panned out because I put the question out there. I pinged my Twitter followers this morning, hoping to get a couple of decent questions, and I got a whole bunch of them. So I'm going to seed some of these questions as the week progresses down the line. But I got one today from Brendan LaSalle, the amazing Judge Brendan, author of X Crawl and Hole in the Sky for Dungeon Crawl Classics. So wonderful human being that I'm so happy to be have been able to play games with and go to cons with and hang out with. And I really miss you, Brendan. I really, really do. Honestly, like we've been able to hang like pretty close at Save Against Fear in Harrisburg like 2 years in a row, and we really missed it. There's one convention I missed this year with Save Against Fear, and especially missed hanging out with Brendan. But his question from Twitter today was, this is so from Brendan, and it was, what makes a classic adventure? I've been thinking about that all week. And this is a really timely question, I thought, because for me, this week, as I've been saying, I went kind of crazy and purchased a bunch of 5e stuff. But one thing I also purchased, one of my very first purchases, was the two of the original adventures, like reincarnated, the reprints that Goodman Games has done of older D&D modules. And I got Into the Borderlands, and I got Isle of Dread. Isle of Dread is a very special place in my heart, and Goodman Games put these out. I'll put the link in the notes below so you can go if you want to go check these out. They're really good products. I've flipped through both, and I'm very excited to have them showing up. So I thought about the question a lot too. So Brendan thought about it all week. I've been thinking about it today and how I wanted to address this. I wanted to make sure that I didn't limit the idea of something being classic to having to be old school. I think there's adventures that we know now are going to be classic adventures in the future. We can just tell. I think we can tell. Maybe not to everyone, but to those folks that are in those fandoms or follow those modules. Because obviously, if you don't play Dungeon Crawl Classics, they're not going to be legendary or classic to you, essentially, right? Because you don't. That's not your game, Just like someone who doesn't play Dungeons and Dragons may have the same experience that way. So, but it doesn't have to be old school. It could be something more recent. For instance, a very classic module that I think of, the first module I thought of, was actually Keep on the Shadowfell, which was a 4th edition module by Bruce Cordell. It was the very first 4e module, I think, that was in print. And I thought that adventure was absolutely magnificent, even though it invoked a lot of feeling from Keep on the Borderlands. It had some really fun twists. I think anyone who played that module will remember fighting that one goblin boss, as you go down into the cave network and have to go down and deal with all the cultists and stuff. Everyone's going to remember that. So that to me is a classic module, and it's something recent. But I wanted to make sure I had something quantifiable today to talk about. So when I think about what's a classic adventure module, and I don't know if that's the way you wanted to go, Brendan, in your question, if you were looking at what makes a session classic or an adventure classic. But I'm going with what makes an adventure classic, But obviously, there's so many ways to answer this question, and my thinking is probably limited and wrong or whatever. But this is my opinion, right? It's my vlog. So I think it's a measure of benchmark and replayability. I think those two things in tandem, how they work together, is what makes an adventure a classic. And I'll give you some examples. Okay, so on the benchmark side, is that adventure a standard bearer? Setting a benchmark that other adventures will continue to try and measure themselves up against. Is it something that did something first, or did something so different and unique that other adventures are going to have to line up behind it to see, could they measure up? So one example, and I have this here, is Isle of Dread. So here we go. This is by David Cook and by Tom Moldvay, if you can see that here. And this is an island hex crawl adventure. This is the adventure that the Isle of Dread reprint's going to be, right? It's the same module, but I have like my first Isle of Dread adventure here, kind of drawn in and stuff. But this was like a hex crawl, and you got to explore the Isle of Dread, and I felt like this was a place where you had Treasure Island meets dinosaurs at the same time. And I played this adventure as my very first AD&D second edition adventure. I know it's a D&D adventure, but I played it in second edition, and I had a paladin there. My very first AD&D second edition character was a paladin, and which my DM was ecstatic because I happened to roll a 17 charisma, because back then you were not playing a paladin unless you had a 17 charisma and a whole bunch of other stats being above a 12. It was a very hard class to get into. And he was very happy. I had rolled up a paladin, so I died pretty soon into the game, because what happened, unfortunately, was that I think it was a black dragon that appeared in the adventure, and my character tried to save the party's thief from a black dragon acid splash, and the GM let me do it, and I died. That's not what makes this a classic adventure, but it made it very, very memorable to me, right? But I think that, you know, this adventure being a wilderness adventure, which was, you know, I think legendary at the time, you know, something new and innovative. It wasn't in a dungeon. That was unique at the time, and it's been redone how many times? What are the Hot Spring Isles? That kind of invokes this feel. It all kind of came out of this, right? So I would say this adventure here, Standard Bearer. This is a benchmark. Another adventure, and we're going to go to the opposite end of the age spectrum or whatever, is Sailors in the Starless Sea. Now, this adventure by Harley Stroh is for Dungeon Crawl Classics, and you know, this is that quintessential game. If you talk to a DCC fan, this is the game that they'll tell you have to try this first, you know, or do this like right under Portal Under the Stars, which is in the back of the DCC core book. So what this adventure did that was so innovative, I believe, is this is, I think, the best early example in DCC of what a DCC funnel is. When you come to an adventure with multiple zero-level characters, you know most of them are going to die, and in the end, they're going to have an epic quest and be heroes, because this doesn't end with them fighting like a pack of wild goats or something that you'd expect zero-level characters to fight. It ends with them like saving the friggin' world from like chaos demons and cultists and stuff like that. And the last battle on this like underground ziggurat on a submerged sea, it's epic, but there's zero-level characters, and that was something with Dungeon Crawl Classics when it came on the scene. It was doing that different than other games at the time. So, benchmarking. I think these are great examples of creating unique benchmarks. All right, replayability. I don't know how effective, how you can effectively call a classic adventure classic if you don't want to play it again. Like, there are definitely modules out there that I'm glad I've played. I don't want to play again. And it doesn't have to be, there's just a bad reason for that. I remember, I might get some flack for this, Dragon Mountain for AD&D 2nd edition. We spent months, I think over a year and a half going through that. I would never want to slog that thing again. It was a beast, and I know it was meant to be a beast. Maybe it was too much. Another adventure that was kind of too much, I'm thinking of here, is, grab it here. Do I want to bring this one up or not? Yeah, you know what? I'm going to do it. Black Spine, all right, for Dark Sun. Really like this adventure, but I thought it was kind of complicated, and there's a lot of moving pieces to it. And I tried running it in 3rd edition also, which kind of hurt. But, you know, I think that this is the kind of adventure where, you know, I'm glad I tried it. I wouldn't play it again. I liked this module, but I wouldn't play it again. What modules would I play again, though? What out there would I want to try more than once? And one example I would say is, now I don't have the printout of it, 'cause it's a PDF, but there's a role playing game called The Strange, and it's by Bruce Cordell and Monty Cook, And Bruce Cordell was the brainchild of, ooh, my camera moved, of The Strange. And one of the first adventures published as what they called a fractal at the time, also the Gen Con 2014 module for The Strange, for like the demo games, was an adventure called Eschatology Code, which introduced players to the world of The Strange, to the idea of these recursions, these alternate realities and whatnot. And in Eschatology Code, you got this perfect introduction to the adventure in an en media res kind of scene where you started out, in the middle of the of an airplane on its way to a town. Excuse me, and you're on a mission already, and so it starts out with great action, but the adventure then shifts into I don't want to call it a heist, but an infiltration. You have to infiltrate this base of operations for this false priest, this guy named Father Foss, this cult leader. You have to infiltrate his base. I have run that adventure at least 5 times. 2 at Gen Con, at least 2 with as demo games, and 1 with my home group. It is never run the same way, and I'm always excited to see how the players get to the end. So, granted, it's a shorter adventure. It's a little less effort than running Black Spine or running Dragon Mountain because, it's not going to take me a year to finish. I think Black Spine took us about 10 sessions. But it's just, as a GM, it was fun to see my players do something different each and every time. And I would happily run Eschatology Code again. That's a recent example, and I wanted to get an example from maybe an older adventure that I feel was very replayable. And if you've listened to me talk, I will go on and on about Dungeon Magazine, issue 36, Granite Mountain Prison. So this is by Roger Baker. I will hold this up as one of my top 5 adventures of all time. Every time. This is a prison escape adventure. You gotta break into a prison, and you have to break a dude out of prison. The prison has such a cool, unique feel to it. It's a giant wheel where the prisoners have to turn the wheel, and every day only one prisoner can get in and get out. It's this giant magic stone wheel. There was so much love crafted in this adventure, which is interesting. At the time, Roger works full-time at Walt Disney Imagineering, the company that designs and builds rides and attractions for all Disney theme parks. I'm really glad there's no prison ride at Disney. I wonder if Roger's still there. I think I messaged him once or tried to find him. Maybe I didn't message him. Maybe I just looked for him online. I think I maybe found him on the Google Plus. I pinged him. But I'm a weirdo, right? But I love this module because it's almost like heist-like. It's a prison escape. You have players that are going to find different ways to succeed in this module. Maybe they try brute force. Maybe they decide they're going to go through it and through complete stealth. Maybe they're going to try to do it on a social methodology. You know what? I'll have to run this in 5th edition because I've run it in 2nd, I've run it in 3rd, I've run it in 4th, and I ran it with The Strange, with the same group I ran Eschatology Code for. Must have been a classic group. All right, so that's my take on classic modules, Brendan. I think that the classic module exists at this intersection of benchmarking and replayability, and where the combination of the two is where you get like nostalgia, which is where you really want to be. You want to let people yearn for that time that they tried that adventure. So great question. Thank you so much for sending it over, and thank you all for watching, and please be kind to each other, and happy gaming.